Chapter 1. Sandy Finnegan sat in the D row, the fourth row of comedian Carrot Top's comedy show at the Luxor, the famed Las Vegas casino. Shaped like a pyramid, it shot out a beam of light aimed for the heavens. Next to her, her son Brett. Sandy brought her son to the show as a way to take his mind off the events that occurred in Connecticut. The Las Vegas trip was also her opportunity to visit several family members who resided in Henderson, Nevada, just outside of the famous Strip. "He's so funny!" Brett exclaimed gleefully as Sandy looked at her son, happy to see a smile on his face. Carrot Top walked into the crowd, and for some reason took aim at Brett, walking over to the boy. "What's yours? Is your name Brett?" he asked. Sandy looked up at him, not understanding why the comic would know her son's name. "Yes," Brett said. "How did you know that?" The comedian looked blankly at Brett, not knowing how to respond. The crowd, with smiles on their faces, had suddenly looked curiously at Carrot Top, a bit confused. "To tell you the truth, Brett, I don't really know." Carrot Top stood up straight and looked at the crowd, realizing he was losing them a little, as he tried to understand himself why he knew this boy's name, and why he'd been compelled to walk over to him. He seemed a bit dazed as he looked at the crowd that almost appeared to spin a little. He then turned to his right, walking towards stage right, as he remained among the crowd. His eyes caught several men, all in suits, and very out of place. Members of the Nicolo crime family sat and stared down Carrot Top. The comedian got a sense that there was something happening in his theater that he couldn't understand. Whatever it wasn't funny. He walked back towards the boy and his mother. "I don't know why I'm telling you this," the comic said as he leaned down, whispering towards Sandy, "but you both need to leave. Now." Carrot Top shot back up, seemingly returning to perfect form, as though he had just snapped out of a trance that the entire audience had just witnessed. The comedian seemed to be the only person oblivious to what had just happened. "Back to the stage," he said as he walked back towards it. The crowd apparently thought this was all part of the show, as the Nicolo family watched the comedian, briefly looking at each other as they wondered what just happened. None of them noticed that both Sandy and Brett had both left the theater. The comic began a routine about the food content in country music lyrics before the Nicolo family members noticed that Sandy and Brett had left the theater, immediately bolting the theater in search of the two. A security member of the Luxor, whom witnessed as a non-participant of neither the show nor the audience, watched both Sandy and Brett and the Nicolo's sudden rush to leave the theater, when noticing the two had left, and began speaking into what appeared to be a microphone on his jacket. "This is Dale at Post D1, and I think something is happening in the casino. I'm not sure what it is, but it doesn't seem to be right. Something was off in CT's theater, and now I think the problem may be in the casino." "What's the problem?" a voice responded over the walkie-talkie on the man's jacket. "I don't know, but I know there is one." Outside of the front of the theater, it appeared as though security guards appeared out of nowhere, more than a dozen of them, looking around for the problem Dale had just transmitted. As the Nicolo family members rolled down the escalator, several other security guards ran by them, heading up towards the theater, not realizing that several of the biggest problems ever to walk into the casino had just passed by them. Fortunately for the casino, it wasn't their problem. The same did not apply to Sandra. Chapter 2. "Tell me why you're here," said Dr. Colton Florian, a red-headed psychologist born in Barnes Green, England, who once a week would visit the Card Clinic, a small clinic in Naugatuck, Connecticut. His central office, located in Manhattan, was where he had his primary clients. However, he'd been asked to give his time to the small clinic and graciously accepted the invitation. Typically, a session in Manhattan with Florian would run about $600 an hour, but in Naugatuck, he offered his service gratis, His partner, Dr. Alfred Scott, had worked at the clinic for several years, and he'd substitute for Scott once a week. Scott then transferred to Boston on the specific day, and Florian simply continued on with the habit of taking over that Wednesday every week. "I'm not sure what you want me to tell you," Florian said to a patient, Michael Manuel. "You come in here every week asking me the same thing. I give you the same advice, but it's only going to positively change your life if it's advice that you take. You were in a relationship where you were blamed for everything you did wrong, and your partner always had an excuse for anything he did wrong. So you not only did what you did wrong, you did what he did wrong as well. That was simply his way. He took no responsibility for anything that he did. That's just his way, but it isn't his fault. He was brought up that way as evidenced by the relationships of his relatives that surround him. One need only look at those for the blueprint for what you were getting into. They never do anything wrong, his entire family. You cannot entirely blame him. His mother and his sister are master manipulators. They know this game. They've done it before. They know how to play with the emotions of their target, but also of their son. They masterfully manipulated the way he received your communications to incite you, then played it off to him. He's a mere puppet and believes what he's fed. No one knew your heart better, so they cut off his ability to know it. He was struck with their demented observations." Michael just sat there, his face red. "I couldn't let go. I was so upset. I was sending emails and videos. I was in a total panic," said Michael. "You gave this man much more credit than he deserved. Half of his ego is a result of you. You knew, though, that this guy was not going to be who you had hoped for. You didn't trust him from the beginning. You didn't trust anyone, though, so it wasn't all his fault. You need to understand, though, nothing is ever his fault. He will live his life not feeling, 'What can we do to make this better?' but merely, 'Next.' Once you realize you were just a step to whatever was next, you'll be better off. You get too caught up emotionally in people who don't know how to be emotional. They are numb to it. Life is just one big party. He was surrounded by people who judged you without knowing you, and your problem was thinking they might actually care about you, when in fact they never did. They are not merely related to your ex-partner. They are jealous of him. There's a sickness there. You knew who he was, but when he's not with you, he's someone else. He's that way with whomever he is with," said Dr. Florian. Michael just nodded his head. "You were in love, Michael. That's okay. It's all right. You were just in love with the wrong person. You were in love with someone who didn't love you, didn't fight for you. And nothing indicates fiction more than that. If he didn't judge you based on who he knew you to truly be, then he didn't deserve you. He deserves the life of materialism he will get. It will not end the way he thinks. It never does. A traitor's path is one that believes they can vanish and pretend the past is not there anymore, simply by relocation. However, wherever this person goes, there this person is. I don't want him to do badly. It's not like I want him to hurt or suffer. He just didn't realize how much I cared about him. Neither did I, until it was too late." Dr. Florian leaned towards Michael. "Michael, you know who you are. So does he. Unfortunately, he cares very much about what other people think, and likely spoke so badly about you that by the time he woke up, he realized he dug himself too deep a hole. To him, you're dead. It's the only way he can go on. This is who he is, and he will never, ever change. He's an in-the-moment person, that's all, but he'll never end up anywhere. Winning the lottery wouldn't even make him happy, because he doesn't even know who he is. He changes depending on where he is and who he's with. It's all just an act. I know this, and I've never met him. What scares him most about you is accountability to all of those who surround him. You need to move on. He doesn't make the clothes. The clothes make him. I know. I am moving on. I've been dating someone. I got scared, though, being with someone else. It didn't feel right, said Michael. It didn't feel right because it was real to you. You feel as though you were betraying him. But him, he was on the next mark days later. Days, said Dr. Florian. He was afraid to talk to you because he is not a man who knows how to face anything. He's a coward. It's called a narcissistic sociopath. Look it up. His entire family does this. They hide in plain sight. But it will catch up to them. They truly believe that they have done nothing wrong. But most of that is due to the fact that he only told one side of the story, and didn't want them hearing all about it. This is a person who will always be someone's bitch, because it's the only way he can get ahead. It's his only talent. He'll talk himself into thinking he's doing it on his own, but he isn't. He can't. He's a puppet, a chameleon. He is what he's surrounded by. You called him out. You were the first to do so, and it's why he didn't want his family talking to you. He wanted them all to believe only his side of things, but trust me, they know him better than they admit. It's simply a new phase of denial, now that you've uncovered the first phase of it. He made a mistake, but buried himself in lies. The phone rang in Dr. Florian's office. I am so sorry. Please forgive me for just a moment, the doctor said, Michael nodding. A serious look came upon Dr. Florian's face as Michael looked around the room, not really paying attention to the interruption. Yes, I am available now. I'm just about done with who I'm with, so by all means please come here immediately. I am available to speak, most certainly. Hanging up the phone, Dr. Florian looked at his patient. We're getting to the end of this session, I'm afraid, Dr. Florian said. Next week, same time? Michael nodded. That was a pretty heavy outpouring there, Doc. You sure you don't need to see someone too?